And we are now live.
Okay. Okay, hold on a sec. Okay, here we go. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. It's John Florescu. I'm here in Bucharest. And as I said earlier today, we have a particularly useful guest because she provides all kinds of services who I suspect many people will be interested in. So it's not only an informational or academic exercise, it's a real useful connection. And we're very lucky to have Dana Bucin, who I know from the United States, and she is Honorary Consul in Connecticut.
Just 1 second, just troubleshooting a small technical issue. We are receiving a feedback here. A small technical issue. We are.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's all taken care of. Go ahead.
Okay, let me just start again. It's John Florescu here, and I welcome you to the Alianta conversation. And today, I am here in Bucharest, and our guest, Dana Bucin, is in Connecticut, and she is Honorary Consul, as most of you know, a lawyer in immigration law, which is her specialty. She went to Wesleyan College, graduated summa cum laude, I noticed, in 2002. And thereafter moved north a little bit to Boston Commonwealth Avenue and went to BU Law School. I believe that's correct. And also in Lyon at the, what's it, Jean Moulin? Is it Jean Moulin?
Yes.
I see. Well, anyways, welcome and very much happy to see you here. Many of you know Dana personally as a very active, one of the most active members of the honorary consuls around the United States, and I should say a role model for my brother Nick in Houston. So here we go. I would just point out that in 1991, she was named Attorney of the Year by a leading publication, I think a legal publication in Connecticut.
2019, yes.
2019. 2019?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I guess the first question is, were you born in Romania or in the United States?
I was born and raised in Romania, all until the 18th year of my life when I came to the United States to study.
So it's a good place to start. So how did you get in?
I got in with a student visa and a scholarship, and I'm very grateful for it. It enabled my coming to America and doing undergrad at the esteemed institution you enumerated, and then going on to study law at Boston University School of Law. And hence, I'm here as an immigration lawyer.
And did you start immediately studying immigration law, or was it sort of your partly a biographical impulse to push for others the way you managed yourself?
My concentration in law school was international law. That was my specialization. They did not have one in immigration law. However, they did have a course in asylum law, and I took it. And that's the extent of my education. And of course, my personal experience and the experience of other students around me who are from everywhere around the world inspired me to pick immigration law.
I see. I mean, you know, in our conversations, we talk about big issues like, you know, Ukraine, about NATO, about all these issues. But when you sit down with a lot of people in this bridge between the United States and Romania, really the visa waiver issue is right up near the top. Now, it seems on the surface a rather dull issue, but not when you're waiting to go to the country or where you see your future that way. Tell us about, how do you explain how did this come so much up on the top screen? I know there are 41 countries right now that have the visa waiver clearance, I guess, in Europe. But how did it all of a sudden pop up so high? What made it issue number one for so many people?
I would say it's been an issue for a long time, at least at more than a decade. We've been trying to get Romanians to have more mobility of travel from Romania to the United States. And it only makes sense because the American and the Romanian people have gotten closer and closer together. whether it's because of the NATO admission or because of the people-to-people exchanges, the cultural, commercial, medical, legal exchanges, they started intensifying. So I think we're at a point in time where we're such best friends with America that it just makes sense to eliminate all the travel barriers that still keep us apart, to make room for even more mobility, and think of it in terms of artists, students, entrepreneurs, doctors who are coming here to just shadow and now they shouldn't need to go to get a visa, etc. All these people now are going to be more mobile to come from Romania to the United States and engage in know-how transfers. And that's what's at stake. At the same time, what I'm noticing is that even at the political level, the Romania-United States relationship has taken a big boost.
Yeah.
And the Ukrainian situation, not especially due to the Ukrainian situation, where Romania has proven to be such a staunch NATO ally in the region. So now the United States is counting on Romania to deliver, security, humanitarian assistance, and a lot of other help to Ukraine. So the relationship is getting closer and closer. It's gotten to a point that it's so close that it just makes sense to have visa-free travel to the United States.
Yeah, it makes sense. And of course, that relationship has been, you could argue, has been warm for a long time, even in the communist period under Nixon. And even we heard John Kennedy in a tape talking about the relationship with Romania in a tape we heard in Boston at the Kennedy Library for one of our films. And so in a way, you could say that relationship has always been warm. And what seems striking is that a nation as close as it is to the United States is one of two, I think, in Central and Eastern Europe that's still not in the ball. Is that in the circle? Is that correct? One of two?
That's right. So we should, us in Bulgaria, we should definitely start getting into the visa-free travel. And it just makes sense from the American point of view. All of a sudden, as we've had just 2 years ago, and I want to praise Alianta for this. Alianta was an organization that has always been on this topic, and 2 years ago has started applying pressure on decision makers by bringing them to the table and organizing panels, discussion panels, so we could debate the win-win case for the visa waiver for Romania. And one of the things that we've seen is that executives from the U.S. travel agencies, from the U.S. Travel Association, have come and made a very strong business case for American tourism, for opening it up for more Romanian and Bulgarian citizens to come visa-free travel to visit United States. And so it's even the business sense, the business case has gotten stronger and stronger on the American side, and the commercial aspect, and it's getting stronger as we speak, given everything that's going on in Central and Eastern Europe right now. So it is the proper time, and the relationship, I've never seen it as strong as it is now in my lifetime. So I think it's the proper time to finally achieve visa waiver travel for Romania.
And just to add a little urgency to what you're saying, on the news here in Romania, only within the last 20 minutes, there was a report saying that President Iohannis is being considered for the head of NATO or a top position at NATO. So that shows deeply how close they are. But how is it that, if you take all this and what you say, and it makes sense to me, how is it that it's taken so long? I mean, when you think of it, I looked at the 41 list, I went down, all these little countries and so forth, and Romanians are perfectly justified to feel a bit miffed or left out. What were the obstacles that you think stood in the way?
I think the biggest obstacle is the visa denial rate. Technically speaking, by law enacted by Congress, visa waiver treatment can only be given to countries that have a 3% or less visa denial rate. Mm-hmm. And that's actually not easy to achieve. Even the countries who achieved it most recently, countries such as Poland and Croatia, had to do some proactive measures in order to lower it to 3% or lower, because naturally speaking, a country does not get to 3% just like that. There's going to be high denial rates for several reasons, including the fact that certain region in that country may not be up to par with the rest of the country. So it would deliver candidates that would have a more immigrant intent, whereas the B1, B2 visas that we're talking about are a very strict non-immigrant intent type of visas. And so when a consular officer at the US consulate in Bucharest, let's say, looks at a visa application from someone in, say, rural Romania, where they may not be employed, if they're not currently employed and they're young and they're not married, they fit the profile of a candidate who might be very motivated to immigrate to America, which is contrary to the purposes of a B1, B2 visa. So they would get denied more often. And if we have candidates like this over and over, the visa denial rate would be way over 3%. My understanding is, though, that Romania's denial rate continues to go down little by little, from upwards of 10%. Now I believe it's getting down to 7% and continuing to slope downwards. One aspect that I believe also contributed in Romania's case to high denial rates is anecdotal experience from my career as an immigration lawyer, getting a lot of calls from Romanians in the diaspora in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out that Romanians living outside of Romania and working outside of Romania, basically having immigrated outside of Romania in places like Milano or Rome or London or Spain, etc. These folks, when they apply for a B1, B2 visa at the US consulate in their country, they tend to be denied at much higher rates.
Yeah. Is that because they have sort of probably loose papers over there or under certain addresses, or, I mean, they themselves are, they themselves are immigrants where they are to some extent, although
that's right. That's right. So there's a presumption that if you immigrated already once, you are much more likely to want to immigrate again, this time to the United States. So they tend to, if they notice that you've been working and living in another country outside of Romania for a long time, you are held to not be able to comply with the requirement of the B1, B2 visa that you show ties to Romania. There's an actual legal requirement that you need to show property ties, employment ties, school registration ties, it's family ties to Romania. And you cannot easily show those when you've been living for the past 20 years in Italy.
Yeah, right. Or staying at a friend's house or something like that. Is it the case, Dana, that in Poland, in order to get that rate down to the 3% you were talking about, they set up a system whereby people seeking visas would actually go to some clearinghouse and they would pre-screen them and in effect only let the perfect ones move forward. I mean, it sounds like a restriction of freedom, but did you hear something like that the Polish government, sensitive to that 3% cap, was putting in a sort of interim step to be sure that we had no duds showing up at the embassy?
There may have been such measures, but what I remember very distinctly from the Polish case is a strategy whereby they try to proactively boost the positive cases.
I see.
Negative cases you cannot control as much, but positive cases of people who are gainfully employed, they have been living and working in Poland for all this time, and they're very likely to be, they're in professions that do not raise suspicions of wanting to immigrate outside of Poland. They work probably for multinational companies that are headquartered in America. And so all these people were prompted to apply to increase the positive numbers. And so I would say that a winning strategy, rather than focusing on the people who you cannot control whether they're gonna, the marginal people who you don't know if they're gonna make it or not. Rather, it is good to focus from Poland and Croatia's example on large numbers of positives, of certain positives, of people gainfully employed in multinational companies in certain liberal professions that do not raise suspicions of immigration to America, such as notaries, lawyers, doctors, etc. And so these folks need to be encouraged to apply in larger numbers rather than focusing on the ones who may or may not make it. Although I have to tell you, John, I have personally been on a mission to warn Romanians in Europe who haven't been living and working in Romania to potentially refrain from applying for B1, B2 visa if they can help it this year, because this is the year when we're under the microscope. From now until October 1st, 2024, I have been advising my own clients, and as many Romanians as would listen to my message, not to apply for B1, B2 visa this year. Hold off until after October 1st, 2024. So
and why is that? Why is that, Dana?
Because this is the year from October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024 is the fiscal year when we're being looked at to see whether we're going to make it at or below 3% denial rate or not. And we're being proactive from as many corners as we can. I've noticed the Embassy of the United States in Bucharest has a very strong campaign to encourage the positives, specifically the visa renewals. And they're doing this because the visa renewals have very high approval rates. They don't even have to undergo an interview at the embassy. So it is then very fitting for the embassy to go out there and encourage the population to renew their visas. By the way, the visa can be renewed even if it expired already within the past 4 years, or if it hasn't yet expired at all, and there's even still quite a few years left on your visa. Even then, it is appropriate to renew that visa. The approval rate is almost 100%. There's no need to travel to Bucharest for an interview. Everything is handled basically through mailing in the passport. And unless there's big issues of admissibility, such as criminal record or prior immigration violations or fraud, these cases of visa renewals should be approved.
I see. And how many, just out of curiosity, I've always wondered this question, because we've been involved with the Romanian Americans who are involved in supporting political candidates in the United States. And we were always asked the question, how many Romanian Americans are in the United States? My figure is at about 800,000. What's your figure? Or do you have one?
I've always heard around 1 million, even upwards of 1 million, but I'm not a good authority on it, unfortunately.
No. Well, no one is, because actually no one knows how many Romanians are in Romania now. You'd have a very hard time getting a figure on that because of the number of people that have left, and I hear numbers all over the place. It's interesting what you say, and let me give an example of cases I've heard in Bucharest when they go to the embassy or the consulate here, and they get a Romanian interviewer, and there's a little game of, they're a little tougher because they kind of know they heard your lines before, and they can catch you out more quickly. And do they tend to be Romanian themselves or American, the ones that are interviewing candidates who are going to the embassies or the consulates here and there?
I frankly never asked them for their passport or nationality, but I am aware that there's a lot of Romanian speakers involved in the process of visa processing. What I would have to say about that is the following. There's a law, and the law gives these people guidelines about what to look at. They have to check for non-immigrant intent. They would be violating law if they didn't ask the questions of where are you employed? What do you plan on doing in the United States? Do you have enough funding to cover your expenses there?
Yeah.
What are your property ties? Do you still have any family? Are you registered in any particular school? Although a lot of this information is already available to them on the DS-160 form that gets pre-filled by the candidate. However, the type of questions that the officers have to ask you, they're mandated by law to ask you. So I would say not to take personally anything they ask, rather be prepared mentally to understand that they're after whether you intend to remain in the United States in violation of the B1, B2 terms, or whether you intend to come back home. So if you want to prepare a good application, I would suggest that you prepare a good proof of your property ties, of your school registration if you're in school, like in a university, of your employment. Employment is absolutely essential. If you're unemployed, I would dissuade you from even trying, please.
Let's go a little deep into it. That's interesting, because now we're going to ask the practical side of your advice and get away from geopolitics and NATO loyalty and all that. But the big pluses are, you started with the list, is number one, a job, a certain address in the United States. Go down the list to give viewers here a sense of, don't bother to go to the embassy unless you have at least these 5 or 6 things. What are the good things to have?
Obviously, a job.
Yeah.
If you have to list you're unemployed and you're not even registered in any university, don't bother. It is very clear that you don't have a purpose to hold you to earn a living in Romania, and therefore you're looking for that purpose in America, which is incompatible with the use of a B1, B2 visa. I would encourage such people to look towards folks like immigration attorneys. That's what we are trained to do. Listen to people's desires to access the American dream. And if we know that they don't have a legitimate visitor purpose for a B1, B2 visa, we could steer them in different directions towards a work visa, a student visa, a permanent residence type of green card scenario if they have a relative here who could sponsor them, etc. So I want people who are listening to us, who are not thinking about visiting, but they're thinking about living the American dream, to consult the only people who are licensed to offer that advice, immigration attorneys. You could find them on reputable websites and consult with them. It doesn't take more than an hour to find out what type of visa you are fit for if you're not fit for a visitor's. But what is not good, because it ruins the national statistics, is to misuse the B1, B2 visa in order to gain access to the American dream. That's a mismatch.
I see. And then also, I suppose, if you're married and have children, is that a plus? It's presumed that you wouldn't leave them behind.
That's right. Yeah. Family ties usually indicate stability in the country where your family resides. So absolutely, marital status is a plus, as in being married. What's also a plus is property ties. If you hold property in your name, like a house or an apartment or land, that's a good signal that you're coming back to care for that property, so you're not going to immigrate. And university enrollment, usually if you are a university student, that is one of the few exceptions to the profiling of the young people. Young people who are not married are usually negatively profiled for this B1, B2 visa. The only exception to that is that if you're actively registered in a legitimate master's program or bachelor's degree program, it is assumed that you might not want to completely renounce your studies to immigrate. So that's also a plus. So either a job or registered for education or property ties, and it helps being married and having kids. But if you don't have any of these, just consult with an immigration lawyer to see what other visas are out there for you and your family.
So it's not a closed door. It's not a closed door. There's many ways to access, as you say, the American dream. I mean, there are different roads in.
Yes, and I would dare say that it is perhaps due to ignorance about the role of of a U.S. immigration lawyer, that people misuse so much the B1, B2 category.
I see. That's interesting.
Yes.
Tell me this, how big an issue is it of Romanians that go to the United States, overstay their welcome, or start working illegally? Is that an issue? Does that pop up in the terms of these discussions?
So I was pleasantly surprised to learn from an executive in the Department of Homeland Security, whom we had as a panelist at Alianta panel 2 years ago. And he said that according to DHS statistics, there's less than 1% overstay by Romanians on U.S. territory. And that none of that plays a role in this visa waiver initiative. And so I would have to, give full faith and credit to the DHS recommendation that there's very few around. Yes, some of them, I know that I am working with some Romanians who, for sometimes, circumstances outside of their control, they fell off the legal documentation wagon. And it takes one slip up for that train to derail, and it's very hard to put it back on track. But these are folks, if I could speak anecdotally on behalf of my clients who are in this situation, they're not people who came here and intended to overstay. They never wanted to be in undocumented status. They are people whose papers slipped even for reasons such as they bumped into the wrong lawyer. That lawyer was incompetent. They did not submit the documentation on time. Now the system does not have effective tools to put that train back on track. So these are not intentional violators. Virtually everyone wants to be here legally and is doing is engaging in all efforts to come to folks like me to legalize. There's very few that are intentionally out there, not even consulting with lawyers. So I just wanted to say that, and that the percentage is minimal. However, as an immigration attorney through organizations such as FORA, Federation of Romanian American Organizations, we're thinking about training our communities, both now and after we hopefully enter the visa waiver program, to ensure that those who, for whatever reasons, overstay, that they put their train back on track, if at all possible. We don't want anybody to stay here unlawfully. It's not good for anyone involved, including for the person who's here unlawfully. It's a hard existence under the radar where no institutions of the state recognize you or offer any benefits because you don't have documentation. So it's not in anyone's best interest for that to happen.
Certainly anybody who doesn't have their papers in order, they can't really get a job in the United States. The employer is at risk, isn't he, if he hires somebody who they know is an illegal alien. I don't know lately with the issues on the border right now, how that's going, coming down. But does the United States deport people for overstaying their visa, or they don't go to that extent?
It depends on the enforcement priorities of any presidential administration. Some presidents are more prone to strictly enforcing immigration laws than others. Let me just say this. Congress has not reformed our immigration system for almost 30 years now.
Yep.
So the laws are broken, and they can be utilized to deport large numbers of people if the executive branch, who's in charge of implementing those laws, decides to do so.
Sorry, go on.
So in other words, a president whose priority is to deport anybody who violates immigration law, irrespective of criminal records, will tackle even the visa overstays. A presidential administration who places priorities and prioritizes criminals and does not prioritize simple immigration violators will not be deporting those overstays.
Do you think that the situation along the southern border in the United States, which is such a high-profile political issue in this presidential campaign. It actually has been for 4 years to some extent, one would say. Is that going to make it more difficult? Will put more political pressure, do you think, on the Homeland Security and on the American people generally say, hey, listen, we just want fewer immigrants, full stop. Sorry if we offend anybody anywhere in the world, but we have too many people inside. Do you think there's a danger of that happening?
That's a great question. And I'm trying to calculate the odds of that happening, of the situation at the border influencing in any way the visa waiver program. And I would have to say those two things are very separate. The legislation governing those two things don't have the same considerations. They're separate legislations. I would have to say the visa waiver program is a very technical 3% denial rate type of issue. Once you hit 3% or less, there's mechanisms in place to make it happen, and it is widely perceived by America to be in its best interest to admit more qualifying countries who are friendly to the United States. They're allies, and they would add a lot of billions of dollars in tourism and cultural and commercial exchanges. So I would have to say one does not have to do with the other. I don't think most Americans, when hearing that we're opening gates for legal mobilization, legal mobility of friendly folks from friendly countries, I don't think most Americans would say no to that. I do believe, though, that most Americans don't understand what's prompting the situation at the border. And like I said, the main source of the problem is the fact that our laws haven't been reformed for 30 years now. And so one thing is the economy we have now. Another thing was the economy we had in the 1980s, 1990s, when was the last time we reformed those laws. As a consequence of this broken immigration legal system, there's very few legal avenues that people could utilize to come to this country. Therefore, a lot of people choose the illegal avenues, the undocumented ways, the crossing the borders. And it doesn't help that there are conflicts in countries around the world. Take Haiti. Look what we're hearing about Haiti. Ecuador is overrun by armed groups from Venezuela. Venezuela is, for all intents and purposes, a failed state, etc. All these people are produced. Don't even get me started on Ukraine, Russia, and Yemen, and Syria, and others hot spots around the world that are producing record number of refugees that are headed for the U.S. borders. So that you understand, at the U.S. border, we have way more than just Latin American refugees. We have refugees from around the world. When you go there, you will see the diversity of
including Romanians, apparently, according to news reports.
Including Romanians, Indians, people from countries you would never expect. They're right there at the border. And they're there because the consulates, they cannot secure visas from the consulates in their country. They cannot secure any other type of refugee status. Refugee status takes years, and sitting in crummy refugee camps in order to secure. So all these desperate people with no legal avenues are crashing at the border trying to get in. So I've always been in favor of reforming the immigration system to give legal avenues for a more orderly immigration system, legal immigration system to the United States. But we don't have that now, and that shows.
Yeah. If I can just flip the situation around, you're an immigration lawyer in Connecticut, in a very lovely state just north of New York City. But the immigration lawyers here, and they're dealing with new kind of immigrants that are coming from the United States to Romania. And it's a new phenomena in not Bucharest, but in Timișoara and Cluj, where there's a surge of Romanian Americans who are coming to Romania to live, or Americans who are coming because in Mexico, they may feel uncomfortable because of crime. In Costa Rica, they're leaving maybe because they don't have hospitals quite at the level. But if you go to a place like Romania, you have, number one, a friendly nation. You have a nation that speaks English. You have a nation that has very little crime. You have a nation that the city like Timișoara, size of Russia, has a university. It has an opera hall. It has a concert hall. It's something. It has a fairly big hospital complex, and you can get to Western Europe, Vienna, or so within an hour's flight, well within an hour's flight. And if you have a U.S. Social Security, let's say it's about $3,500, something like that, well, you can live, thank you, very nicely in a city like Timișoara. Have you heard about this phenomena? Your direction going in the other direction now.
Yes, I have heard a little bit, and anecdotally, I have some folks who are asking for my help to land, at least professionally, back to Romania. And I'm talking about Romanian Americans who have earned their degrees here and have work experience in the medical field and in a bunch of other fields. And now they're trying to go back towards the latter part of their lives and make a living in Romania in the same field. And then they need help with degree equivalency. And thank God we have a law in Romania now that makes it easier for medical staff, medical professionals from the United States to equivalate their studies and their experience in Romania and make a living there. So I'm definitely seeing some efforts by Romania to attract professionals from the United States to go back, at least from the diaspora first, but there's no reason why the same laws don't apply to Americans born and bred here, like born and raised in America, who could take their medical degrees to Romania. Of course, Romanian language skills would probably be necessary in order to fully function there, but at least I'm seeing that. I am seeing what you're talking about, and I find it very interesting. And I also want to put a plug in for the movement called Repatriot. I'm not sure about if you heard about it, but there's a movement in Romania to attract at least the diaspora back to Romania. So there's definitely a phenomenon worth watching and seeing how much it gets accelerated. And another trend that I'm seeing is American citizens of Romanian ancestry, and especially from the Jewish population. I see descendants of Holocaust survivors who once had some roots to Romania, and they want to understand their roots and I potentially even regain Romanian citizenship and visit, and why not make Romania their home country again. I'm getting contacted by quite a few Romanian Jewish American descendants.
You should probably start an affiliate office in Timișoara, Cluj, and Iași, handling cases both ways. I mean, to some extent, you used the term the American dream at the beginning of this conversation, and a lot of people are questioning that in the United States for all kinds of reasons and all kinds of, I can think of an example of a heart surgeon at Mass General Hospital, which is one of the best hospitals in the United States, that returned to his native Cluj. And I asked him, why did you leave a high-paying job, super prestigious, to go back to Cluj? He said, because I wanted my kids to go to the same school I went to, and life's easier and simpler and everything else. So I think that that's maybe a bit of another phenomenon that's going on. The political landscape and pressure in the United States is making people think twice, and maybe they still have relatives back here. So the Romanians say, if you don't let our people in, we won't let your people in. They could use a bit that argument. What is the Romanian government doing to accelerate this effort? I know that Ambassador Moraru met with the Secretary of Homeland Security, who I think is of Romanian origin, is he not?
Yes. So in terms of what the Romanian government is doing, I just want to underline the fact that I am not an official consul. I'm an honorary consul. So I'm just a non-governmental person who is trying to be helpful in the bilateral relations between Romania and the United States. So I cannot tell you exactly what the Romanian government is doing, other than to tell you what everybody else has been hearing at the receptions that the Embassy of Romania and the ambassador has invited us. And yes, I want to say that Secretary of Department of Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who is half Romanian, as it turns out, because his mother was Romanian and who emigrated to Cuba. And so I still remember participating in the National Day of Romania held by the Embassy of Romania in DC. And at that time, I was delighted to absorb the speech of Secretary Mayorkas, who at the end told us this, and it was very heartwarming. He said he was shy about repeating what his mom, a Romanian mom, has told him in the house. She taught him a few Romanian words, and he was very shy to repeat those to foreign delegations from Romania. So we all imagined that they would be some sort of curse words or something. Turns out that those words, he wanted to say it publicly to us, and those words were "te iubesc."
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Which is the word for "I love you" in Romania. And so I thought that was very heartwarming, that is what his Romanian mom transmitted onto him and what he wanted to transmit to us on the occasion of the National Day of Romania in DC. So that's another reason why I'm saying I've never seen such warm relations between Romania and the United States as I'm seeing it now. And Secretary Mayorkas is a big piece of that. He has been very kind, very cooperative, within the parameters of the law, of course, but he is definitely helping Romania comply with all the obligations of getting to the 3% and all the other security obligations, because I forgot to mention, mainly because I'm not a governmental employee, but I forgot to mention to you that there's a lot of transnational security features.
Yes,
it turns out that the visa waiver program has to screen people for their background to make sure there's, we know who these people are. They're not dangerous to the security of the United States. They don't have any criminal records of interest to us, etc. In fact, the DHS officials often say that visa waiver program is safer to the security of America than the B1, B2 visa system, it turns out. But for all these security measures to be implemented, there needs to be very close cooperation, government to government. And it is my understanding as an outside observer that that has been achieved. That's been done. The Romanian government is very closely cooperating with DHS, US DHS, and the security is being implemented as well as, so now our only job is to work on lowering the denial rate. And
a lot of Romanians feel that, sorry, you were in mid-sentence.
And that's being done proactively. I just wanted the public to know that proactively the American Embassy is working on prompting visa renewals, which is going to lower the denial rate. And I am proactively working on telling Romanians in Europe to perhaps sit this one out until after October 1st.
Okay, that's what we important to underline that point, sit it out. What do you say, Dana, to people, nonetheless, despite all what you said, who somehow feel offended, like they do in the case of Schengen, where you can go to Western Europe by plane, but if you come by ground transportation, it's another matter. So Romania is waiting there. So they seem to be in queues all the time after they've given so much of their aid, their support, their cultural assimilation to America. Explain why this is not an act of, let's say, in this case, the Biden administration or an expression, but it's a legal decision. It comes from Congress, right? So Congress has to change the law. And there are two leaders, Durgan, Congressman Durgan and Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire have been active. But explain so people understand that it has to do with the American law and this percentage, because I think that's a key issue.
Okay, I'm happy to. So by now we know America is a country of laws. Okay, if we have laws, we have to respect them. So you're not going to ever see the Department of Homeland Security or any agency of the United States doing things that are contrary to US law as established by Congress. Congress established law is sacred, and that's what the executive agencies like DHS, that's reigning over and DOS, Department of State, which is the department that controls the consulates and the embassies, right? So these two departments will never do something that's in violation of congressional law, right?
Yeah.
And we have to understand that this law with the visa waiver is not only for Romania, it's not only for Croatia, Poland, or the 41 countries that are, it's for everyone who ever was, is, or will ever be in a visa waiver program. This is what the will of the American people says, that if you want to be mobile, to come into America without a visa, without the screening at the consulate, then you need to lower that rate. You need to keep a visa denial rate of 3% or less. Who controls the visa denial rate? Arguably, both sides. But one side is Romanians, right? The single-handedly, if Romanians behaved collectively in a way that would not trigger suspicion of lack of non-immigrant intent, then we would lower the denial rate. How realistic is it that only Romanians can control that? Not very realistic, which is why I see our American counterparts helping in this process. They're encouraging visa renewals. They're telling us where are the spots that we need to push in order to help us comply. What is not acceptable, though, and everybody needs to understand that, we cannot just toss the 3% legal requirement aside. That would disrespect the will of the American people, okay? And DHS will do no such thing. DOS will do no such thing. Everybody needs to respect the 3%. The key is, how do we help each other lower to 3% or less? That is the key. And like I said, by encouraging visa renewals, which we know will be approved.
Yeah.
By discouraging applications from spots in the world that are known to have high denial rates, like Italy, Spain, UK, right? People who immigrated already there. And so if we know this, and I'm sure they're already underway all sorts of other case-by-case efforts, such as encouraging big groups of companies to renew the visas of their employees, such as encouraging perhaps employees of the Romanian state to apply, because we know that those don't cause an issue of non-immigrant. I'm sure there are all sorts of other smaller efforts in Romania, including, I'm aware that I believe it is your brother who's doing a public campaign.
Yes, that's correct. Rod is involved with that.
Right. So there's a public awareness campaign about people going and renewing their B1, B2 visa. All of these efforts are targeted towards affecting the statistics in a legal way, in a way that can be done legally. So I understand the frustration from the Romanian people. I understand that, because I agree that Romania is helping the United States in such an extent that it would deserve this type of treatment, of favorable treatment. On the other hand, the Romanians need to understand there's a legal requirement that cannot be easily you cannot just ignore that legal requirement. You just have to comply. So find a way to comply.
A nation of laws, as you will.
Yes.
You know, there are no exceptions, there are no back doors. And also, I think the important point that this applies to all the countries. It's not just Romania that has this thing. It's all the countries that are. Then also, I guess, somewhat to our disadvantage, we have no preeminent public Romanian figures in the United States that I can think of that help carry this message around. We're on a call here, but there's no one who's taking the lead in the public domain. Is there in the United States on this? It's probably too much sort of off the radar.
Yeah, I'm not aware, but if efforts by PR agencies such as your brothers are interested, we can connect offline, and we could suggest a few public figures that might carry this publicly for folks. But I don't see the benefit of doing it in the United States. Those people who need to renew visas are not here. They're in Romania.
Yeah.
Or even in Europe. And I just want to add a nuance to what I said before. I know I said to you that Romanians outside Romania have a high denial rate for first-time visas, but they have a positive approval rate for renewals.
I see.
Because of the same mechanism that applies. You just have to ship in your passport in the mail. Nobody's going to bother you with an interview. If nobody bothers you with an interview, they have no opportunity to spot lack of non-immigrant intent, property ties, la, la, la. So that scrutiny doesn't even happen at visa renewal, right? That's why I would encourage every Romanian everywhere, where no matter where situated, to just apply for a visa renewal. Doesn't matter how many more years of validity you still have. You can apply, and arguably you should apply now, because if we enter into the visa waiver program, it will not be practicable for you to apply to have a B1, B2 visa. And the difference between visa waiver and B1, B2 visa is visa waiver only gives you up to 90 days per year of visa-free travel to the United States. B1, B2, 6 months.
I see.
Visa waiver does not allow you to change to any other status while in the United States. You will have to go back and then come back with that other status.
I see.
B1, B2 visa does offer you the possibility of doing a change of status on U.S. territory, as well as an adjustment of status to that of a permanent resident if you qualify for permanent residence. So there's advantages to retaining a B1, B2 visa. That's why people who already have a B1, B2 visa, which usually gets given for 10 years, and let's say they still have 3 years left, even those people should apply for a renewal. Because with just 3 years left, if you apply for a renewal now, you're going to get a 10-year-long B1, B2 visa, which is good for after January 2025, when we're supposedly going to enter the visa waiver. So those people will have 10-year-long travel for up to 6 months per year. So that is the incentive for everyone everywhere to apply for visa renewals.
So let's be optimistic. Let's hope that it's falling as we speak. We're getting closer and closer to 3%. We'll see, of course. But let's say we clear that 3% threshold. Then how long? What are the processes explain in political terms, in terms of what has to happen at the Department of Homeland Security, or I don't know, in the Justice Department, or whoever, State Department? What has to happen to have this take effect, to grant Romania the visa waiver status?
Some pure formalities. Basically, the Department of Homeland Security needs to notify Congress and all the other parties that need to be notified that Romania has finally complied with all the conditions to enter the visa waiver program. And then technologically and technically speaking, to integrate systems, security systems, implement all the security systems with Romania that needs implementing in order for visa waiver program to start basically in January 2025. It would be terrific if that were. I'm not sure how realistic it is, because that is an internal DHS type of prediction. But I've been told that January 2025 might be realistic. But even if it's within the 2025, year, anytime, any month of 2025, it's still good. It's still good.
I see. And then so there's no point getting mad with your congressman. There's no point getting mad with the embassy. The law is the law. We hope that the number of applicants coming in with sketchy backgrounds or unclear past, refrain from going to the embassies and refrain from asking a visa. And every visa acceptance or denial counts as one, right? Whether it's a renewal or a first-time visa, right? They don't have different value when you're making the totals.
That's right. But I would like to say something so that you understand the harm that can be done by a collective number of people applying and getting denied right now. Every denial, I've heard this statistic somewhere, every denial, say in Italy, takes 33 visa approvals in Romania in order to overcome.
Yeah, I read that same statistic, 33.
Right. So that's why if that's why I'm going to do repeated campaigns just in my personal name, because I can do it. I have the authority to, I know the law, and I have the authority to tell people this. I'm certified and licensed to, as a U.S. immigration lawyer, to tell people, why don't you just postpone your plans for travel to the United States for the first time? For first-time visa application, if you live outside of Romania, why don't you just wait until after October 1st, 2024, when we're done being under scrutiny for visa waiver? Just postpone. Simply, just postpone. If you're in one of these hot spots and you know you're in danger of being denied. And so that is the message here, so that they don't push us to do 33 more visa approvals in Romania.
Make up for it. Why did you say down there, just until October 1st? Aren't constantly under scrutiny year to year to year, or?
No, it's a fiscal year, right?
Yeah,
So
fiscal year, but every year, still, every year. The clock starts again.
Yes, but we're doing a concentrated and concerted effort for 2025, January 2025 admission, meaning that all of our strategies are targeted to achieve that type of admission. And so if there's a year to try, because you cannot keep the concentration ongoing for several years, right? You got to pick one good year where all of us should agree to act collectively, to behave collectively in such a way to facilitate that 3% or lower denial rate. And so that's what I'm saying. This is the year where we should all be trying to encourage anybody we know.
Good.
If we have relatives in Europe who haven't been in Romania for years and they want to come see us in America, our job as Romanian Americans would be to tell our relatives, you know what, if this is your first time soliciting visa, come see me after October 1st, 2024. I'll wait for you then.
Now, speaking of waiting, I think we're going to be pushed off this call in a second. Well, Luca, I just saw you pop on. Did you have any particular questions? I think we have a few minutes left.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick time check, and we do have some comments and a couple of questions. And I think that Dana is actually monitoring the YouTube comments right now. One of the questions from Alex Madison that came in says, would it be possible to discount in some way the applicants that are applying outside of Romania when determining the visa refusal percentage?
By law, no. There's no mechanism that allows them to be discounted, unfortunately. They're just going to simply be denied. And U.S. consulates in other parts of the world other than Romania are not as sensitized to Romania's aspirations to enter the visa waiver program as is the U.S. consulate in Bucharest, right? So in vain do you go to Italy, to the U.S. consulate in Italy. They're not, their mission is Italy first, not, Italy-U.S. relations, not Romania. So there is a third country national, a Romanian, coming in, reeking of lack of non-immigrant intent. What are you going to do? You're going to deny them. So that's why we tell people to just postpone their plans. If they want to visit the United States, can they do so after October 1st? And if they do so after January 2025, chances are they don't even need to pay to secure a visa. That's another consideration. It's $190 to pay for a B1, B2 visa. If they wait until January 2025, it's like $14 for the ESTA registration. That's it.
Okay. Well, Luca, did you have another question there?
We had one other question that came in that asked, how far are we from reaching this 3%?
That's $1 million question, $64,000 question.
If I were a governmental employee of the United States or and or a governmental employee of Romania, I would be able to respond. Since I'm neither, I cannot. I do not know where we currently are. All I understand is that we are on a positive downward slope, we have less and less denial rates as time goes by, but I don't know exactly where we are.
Well, Dana, I want to thank you very much for that. We probably should have had your number flash up on the screen, 1-800, whatever. You gave us a free tutorial, free legal advice to all listeners. And it was very instructive, and it was very detailed, and very granular. And I think you made your case, made your points clearly. So it was a big help to us. And thanks so much for coming on. And I'll give you a call another time on my own immigration questions.
Anytime, John, and I'm a big admirer and friend of Alianza. And like I said, I give them a lot of credit. And Ambassador James Rosa Pepe, a lot of credit. 2 years ago, he had the vision of starting this conversation, putting together these panels, having DHS meet U.S. Travel Association, meet the Romanian government. I was the moderator, and we started these conversations, which led to an approachment in relationships that is now leading to such a tight relationship for finally getting Romania admitted into visa waiver program. And a lot of credit also goes to Ambassador Andrei Muraru, who has been tightening those relationships at the highest level. And so that's why we are where we are. And I am very grateful for being here, because I am very hopeful about the result.
Good. Well, I've never said this to a guest before, but I hope we don't have you back on this subject next year.